to Josh.
Great, thanks very much. Welcome everyone. The first thing that I would love everyone to do is actually stand up if you're feeling able to stand up, just to have a little bit of a stretch as well. Right.
Did you turn it on? Did you?
Hello.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. So either with your eyes closed or open, I'd like to just acknowledge, as a white settler here, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, traditional owners of the land that we're on, Naarm. Pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and to any First Nations people in the audience today. I acknowledge that this land was stolen and never ceded, and I appreciate the strength of First Nations people in their active resistance, and invite you to take a moment to reflect on the genocide in this colonised country. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Please have a seat. So for anyone feeling a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit strange, we're going to be talking about shame today. And Australia has a ton of cultural shame around what happened in this country. We don't like to talk about it. And actually, that shame for settlers leads to a lot of silence. There's the anniversary of the national apology a few days ago. What's happened since that apology? Not much action. Actually, things are worse in many aspects. So today I want you to listen to your gut, notice what happens in your body, and lean into discomfort. Hopefully by the end of my presentation I'll have made everyone a bit uncomfortable, but also with some hope for growth and learning and moving forward. I also wanted to thank Anita so much for inviting me back after last year, and also for her wonderful way of opening up the workshop and the conference. For anyone who hasn't already put their pronouns onto their badge, I want you to take a moment to think about why you didn't when she invited you to. And also whether you'd be willing to do it now. Take a minute. Yeah. I have mine on here. I've also got this cute pin. It says they and them pronouns. Go on, please. Give it a shot if you haven't. So I'm going to be talking about LGBTQ, health and sexuality, but I'm not going to be talking too much to just giving you knowledge. You've had a lot of knowledge this morning, so we're ready to get active. Let's get you working. So, is this area easy? Well, I took about 5 minutes to just brainstorm a few areas that I thought might be interesting, and I reckon you could do a day conference on almost any one of these. There's lots of these that I know a bit about, some that I know a lot about, but I could learn more about all of them. So, with your LGBTQ clients, it might feel like opening up a can of worms. We've used that a few times today, but holy hell, a lot of people are really scared of opening up this particular can of worms. So, what if we just looked at one? And yeah, let's look at the one that everyone thinks about when they think about queer sexuality, HIV. HIV diagnoses are still happening in Australia. It's still a relevant topic. So we're going to do some multiple choice questions. Everyone grab out your phones, go to the Polyv thing. I want you to think about how confident you would be in both educating and soothing Ben, a 22-year-old pansexual man newly diagnosed with HIV. What do you reckon? How confident would you be in working with him? Were you able to see the answers? Right, yeah. So quite a lot of you are saying a little bit, and a variety of other answers as well. Great. Whoops. All right, next question. How much training have you received to help Ben? with the HIV knowledge, with knowing what pansexual is, for working with a 22-year-old pansexual person, what it means to be that age in 2020. Did you get training in high school, in your professional studies, in PD? So most people are sort of saying some training, but almost a quarter of you saying like none. And yeah, maybe another quarter of you saying no specific training, but you've kind of done a bit yourself. All right, next question. Well done to the people who've done lots of training. Gold star. So, when it comes down to it, how good a job do you think you'd do with Ben? And really have a think about yourself and your professional expertise. Thank you for being honest, those people who feel like you might actually do a terrible job. That's a brave thing to say. And also might be realistic. In fact, we know men like Ben experience terrible care from clinicians every day. I haven't met a single client who has had previous experience with other healthcare professionals who hasn't got a horror story. Well done to those who reckon they do excellent care and that they'd refer to others. Brilliant. But I also want you to have a think about where you might be able to grow. All right. So, we picked one of those topics on that screen back there. How wide is it? Well, I did a little brainstorm about HIV and AIDS, and it turns out this area is massive as well, as you might suspect. So, feeling a bit overwhelmed? Or good. But what if we went back to basics? So first, do no harm. I'd imagine, there's some doctors in the room, but I think most other healthcare professionals have this idea in their mind as well. But what we're actually doing, as I mentioned before, is failing basic care. She told me polyamory never works, just break up. My therapist asked if I'd had the surgery. My GP extended me, and it took me a year to try another GP. These are real quotes from clients, friends, community. They looked disgusted when I told them about my partners and their HIV status. And said it was because you're a trans. And didn't feel safe. Didn't feel safe to talk about what was really going on. So, a visibly queer client presents. What happens next? On the left-hand side, the clinician has a kind of overconfidence. We treat everyone the same. I'm great at my job. I'm in a position of power and authority. And, or maybe they're a bit bigoted and are like, whatever, don't care, just another person. And they end up insulting, demeaning, or just totally missing the point of the client. And that's often active harm. That really sucks. And I hope no one in this room would do that. I think mostly there's a tendency towards the other side. Fear, avoiding offense, like not wanting to hurt the person, but that often leads to silence, avoidance, and ultimately ineffective care, which is also not what you're aiming for either. So that's a kind of passive harm. We're mostly going to focus on that one today. So, why are we failing them? Well, mostly it comes down to, I don't wanna, it's too hard. Politicians and legislations, well, it's too hard for them, it's too hard for the education system, it's too hard for the medical establishment. I don't wanna, too hard. It's too hard to do, so we just won't do it. We'll just avoid this thing. And what's behind that reaction of too hard? Well, it's all of the big yucky things underneath a lot of society. So sexism, heterosexism, which is sometimes called homophobia, monosexism, which is sometimes called biphobia, or discrimination against people for their multigender attraction, cisgenderism, which is sometimes called transphobia, intersexism, so discrimination against people based off their sex characteristics or variations. And of course, the big nasty ones are white supremacy, colonialism. I'd also talk about patriarchy or those other big systems of oppression and power dynamics. So have a think about how those things might lead someone down one of these tracks to active harm or passive harm. Have a think about how it might have led you to one of these tracks. The issue is ignorance and avoidance of LGBTQIA+ issues. It's killing us. One of the biggest surveys on bi+ people in Australia, thousands of people, found that 1 in 3 bi+ people will attempt suicide in their lifetime. Trans folks, it's about half. That's like many times the general population. So we have to do better. And I'm not really going to give stats and research too much in this presentation. Please just trust me. It's grim, and it's still really grim. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to keep calm and stay basic. So I want to invite everyone to take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Oh, that's good for me too. So, how do we stay basic? Treat them as whole human beings. Listen to your clients. They're the experts in their lives. So, actually, how to be a great clinician? Well, the bar is set very low. It's set very low by the utterly horrible clinicians that are out there who aren't here today. So your job is to jump over a very low bar. So let's do some together. I want you to think of a low bar job as using the client's name consistently, or listening to the words that they say and reflecting them, being gentle and curious. You don't need to do a doctorate in gender studies, right? So let's do some practice. On your tables, I've put a little slip of paper that you're all going to work on in teams to have a think about what might be a low bar response. So every table will have a different slip of paper. Please have a look at it now. If you can't find it, wave your hands. I'll come find it for you. And have a read of it together and think, what might be one of the most basic ways in which you might work with this client? Remember, keep it simple. Simple, simple, simple. And I want you to nominate one person from each table who's going to report back to the whole group. Who's going to be the brave person today? How you would act? Yeah. Thank you. I'm going All right, that's enough thinking time. I want everyone to be quiet. Choose the person who's going to speak back for the group, and that person is going to stand up. So I want to see one person from each table standing up in front of me. You can remain at your tables. one to each table with the microphone. Starting on this one. Who's our person? Alright, so first of all, I'd like you to just read out the example.
Yeah, sure. So Opal, a 17-year-old non-binary high school student who uses they, them pronouns, wants to get a sexual health test as they're sexually active.
Cool. So what's one low bar response, question, way of treating this person?
Yeah, so we just talked about being, asking questions, being curious, finding out what their experiences have been and why they're wanting to get a sexual health test and...
Yeah, great. So asking, why do you want the sexual health test?
Mm-hmm.
And what's it been like for you? Amazing, brilliant. Next table, we'll go back first.
So our example is Fuad is a 31-year-old queer man, says he's sad all the time, can't concentrate, and also that he's in his first same-gender relationship, which he's hiding from his conservative family.
Alright.
So our initial thoughts was just to ask what his pronouns are, how he likes to be called.
Brilliant.
Checking how
I'll pause you there.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Ask him what his pronouns are. Amazing. Yeah. That's brilliant. Well done. Yep. Next group. Yeah, everyone just literally one example is enough, and it's okay if you repeat each other, it's fine.
Okay, our person is Sharon, a 43-year-old transgender woman who comes in with complaints of persistent UTIs and painful sex with her partner. Again, we want to be consistent with her name.
Yep.
Ask her pronouns and don't make assumptions what her partner might be.
Right.
Ask.
Yeah, ask. Excellent.
Be curious.
Well done. Next group.
We also had the Fuad, the 31-year-old from previously. So in addition to the pronouns, we had acknowledging their courage for coming forward and wanting to let them tell us their story.
Amazing. Perfect. Acknowledge their courage. Yeah, great.
We had Opal, a 17-year-old non-binary high school student who uses they, them pronouns and wants to get a sexual health test as they're sexually active. So we talked about not assuming who their partners are or what kind of sex they're having in terms of what tests they're going to do.
Right.
And respecting their pronouns, and maybe talking about contraception if it's relevant.
Yep. Brilliant. Yeah. So asking what kind of sex they're having, which might then tell you what kind of tests you need to give them. Yeah, great. Just briefly, has anyone been for a sexual health test yourself and actually been asked the kind of sex that you're having in order for the doctor or whoever to give you the appropriate tests? No? I generally tell my doctor, I want this, this, and this. But it sucks. Why isn't that the case? Alright, next group, yeah.
For the 31-year-old queer man, says he's sad all the time, can't concentrate, and also that he's in his first same-gender relationship, which he's hiding from his conservative family. We asked about the pronouns and probably normalising their relationship.
Yeah, right. Normalize the relationship.
Some information about STIs, PEP and PrEP.
Yep. Brilliant. Great. We'll keep going. I think we've heard all of the examples now, so we'll just move on to what would your group do? Yeah. Yeah, we'll start with the front here.
So we have Sharon, the 43-year-old trans woman who has UTIs and painful sex. And much the same as other people, we talked about asking about pronouns, calling Sharon Sharon as much as possible.
Yep.
Asking about sex, and the other thing I think is, I'm a GP, she has persistent UTIs and painful sex, and so I would ask all the standard questions that I would ask about
All the
UTIs and
standard
painful sex.
questions, right? Brilliant. Yes, amazing.
Well, we looked at asking all the standard questions as well, but also wondering if the partner was sympathetic, if the partner was willing to, help supported during, this difficult period.
Lovely. Ask about the partner. Yes.
Ask So we had Sharon as well, and pretty well everything that everyone said.
Yep.
Plus showing a lot of interest and curiosity, validating what they brought to the session.
Yep, brilliant. Validation, hearing them, acknowledging them. Yeah.
We also had Opal, and everything's been said, so not assuming that it's HIV or pregnancy, don't ask about specific partners, boyfriend, girlfriend, having consent. I guess as a mental health professional, I would even ask, some people who identify this way might have high rates of mental health issues, or do a bit of an assessment just to see how they're going as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to bring up, and absolutely, there's high rates of mental health issues in non-binary people, especially. Are they there for a mental health assessment? Not necessarily. But often once when you've got hold of someone, you might want to do some of your standard tests and things just to kind of check in. So gently saying, how are things going? And what's that been like for you? And listen to them, and if they're like, yeah, sex is great, school's cool, I just want a STI check. I'm like, great, go ahead, cool. So good thing to keep in mind, thanks.
So we had Phil at our group as well. So we talked about adopting an empathic approach and acknowledging what a tough time he, she, they're having.
Yep.
And then screen for and manage depression or anxiety as you would for any other person.
Yeah, brilliant, thanks.
The only other thing we're going to ask, and we can do it again, but was just about defining some terms like queer or visibly queer or I plus, which we kind of didn't get to earlier.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'll get to that in a little while. Yeah. Or you can ask me in the break. Yeah, thanks. Last one.
We had Opal as well, the 17-year-old.
Yeah.
I think everyone's mentioned the things we were talking about. And I guess just reflecting on their age at 17, maybe this is the first time they've seen a doctor and talked about this, and just wanting to set a positive interaction and maybe not the terrible.
Totally. How many 17-year-olds do you know going for STI tests? Give them a high five. Say thank you so much for coming, for looking after your sexual health. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. I want you to give yourselves a little clap. Well done. So, look, I bet you would love from me a glossary with explaining all the terms. What's the list of do's and don'ts? How can I attract and keep clients? And, just what are all of the best resources? All in good time. All in good time. And I've actually passed along to Anita a big old sheet of resources. Please have a look at them. It's a waste of my time up here to take you through a glossary, to be honest. You can please just Google it, it's there. Instead, what we're going to talk about is shame. So, Brené Brown says that shame corrodes the very part of us that believes we are capable of change. What is shame? Well, guilt is maybe I've done something bad. It's about the action and the consequence. Shame is internal. It's I am bad. And shame, it can't survive being spoken and met with empathy. And I want you to be thinking about the client's shame and sexual shame. And, especially if a queer person has been told all of their life that they're wrong, their sexuality, gender, or sex variance, what shame they might have, how they might struggle to talk about it. But also, Anita talked about it before, we live in a sex-negative, sex-shame-filled world, right? Lots of us have sexual shame. I also want you to think about your own shame and hiding and avoidance in the room, and where that sits in your body. So, to break the ice a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about my shame. Back when I was a more junior psychologist, I was working at Victoria AIDS Council, now Thorn Harbour Health, and I had a client who was into extreme fisting. Extreme fisting is where you're fisting, so inserting your hand in this case into the anus for pleasurable sex. Extreme fisting for him meant most of the forearm. And so that required lots of preparation, lots of time. He loved it, was totally obsessed with it. And he was coming to me because, well, he was finding difficulties with his partner, difficulties with work and maintaining relationships, and was sort of taking over his life. Now, I was a junior psychologist, but I mean, to be honest, I thought I knew a bit about sex and, you know, whatever, like, nothing's gonna shock me sort of thing. This threw me, to be honest, and I thought, how did I respond to that client in the room when they shared about that in the first session? I don't know, I think I did probably a between okay and terrible job. But I felt shame. And at the time, I was only exploring my own sexuality and queerness and working out what it meant for me. And he was this older gay man who was talking about what felt for me like, whoa, like way down the track. So what did I do? Well, I went home, I felt awkward about it. I thought, oh, I've fully fucked this session. I don't know how I'm going to recover and do really well with this client. And then I went to my supervisor. I talked about it. We talked about it. I went online, I did a ton of research. It only took kind of like half an hour to an hour's research to get kind of like the basics of, all right, like you need to be thinking about your diet, you need to be thinking about the lube that you're using. It does actually make a difference if your partner has big hands or small hands. That there's, you know, not that much information to learn, but there's quite a lot for me to come in terms of my comfort around actually talking about all of these issues without sinking into my chair and not really knowing how to talk about it. So, now it's time for you all to think about your own moments of shame. And there's two ways we can do this. You can write it physically on a note, or you can go online on your phone to bit.ly/shame20 and send in a submission. What I want you to send in or to write down is a clinical mistake you've made, or a knowledge gap that you feel shame about. That you think, you know what, in my stage of career I really should know this, but I just don't. Maybe it's something that you've heard today that you're like, how is this something that I know nothing about? So please, go ahead, write something down, have a bit of a think about it. And please keep them anonymous, because I'm going to read out a bunch. And as you're doing this, notice what comes up in your body. Notice if there's one example that you're like, oh, it's probably that one, but I don't think I can share that. Can I maybe get some internet help?
That computer has internet.
Oh yeah.
So you should try here. Maybe?
Yeah, sure thing.
Let's try that.
Yeah. All right, let's have a look. Assuming that a transgender client wanted to transition purely due to their early sexual trauma. Oh yeah, that's a common one. A client asked me the risks of scat sex. I had to ask him what that was. That I tried anal sex with my boyfriend as a cis woman. Yeah. Assumptions about sexuality of a man married to a female who presented with gonorrhea. Yeah. Or assuming that a patient's sexual partner was their wife. He wasn't active with her, but did have a mistress. Let me refresh, hopefully there's a few more. Assume gender of a partner or guess their pronoun, especially around child rearing. Yeah. In retrospect, that must have been hurtful, having those societal expectations of who should, or having a family pushed on them in what I had meant to be a safe place. Yeah, ideally we want to try and create a safe place, but sometimes we fail. Out of my curiosity, I asked a lesbian lady who was the man and woman in their relationship. She was offended by this and I later apologized, but in reality, I didn't understand why this was offensive. Yeah, that's also a really common one based off cultural expectations and what we see in the media. General avoidance around a sex act that is triggering for me because of a past personal experience and because I don't like it. Yeah, so it might be because it's a personal experience that it brings up shame for us. Not noticing preferred name and called Rowena rather than Ro. They're actually a trans man. Can you imagine how that person might have felt in the waiting room or wherever it might be? So, mostly, I want you to consider that actually all of us experience shame in different ways. And at its worst, it silences us and stops us from seeking further education, or it hurts our clients, which, you know, like that's what, we're there to help them, not hurt them. So I want you to have a think about what came up for you, thoughts, feelings. Please discuss in your groups. Talk to the people in your group about what that experience was like. If you feel safe enough, share which one was yours. Yeah, please go ahead. And exciting news, everyone, we're about at the halfway point, so please feel free to get up and stretch. You can continue talking. Thank you, everyone. I'll pause discussion there for the moment. Well done speaking, everyone. I'll get a little silence. Can continue chatting at lunch, which will be soon after this. Do I need to do it? Thanks, everyone. I'm so excited that you felt able to talk in your groups about this. Wow, for like a medical and Monash and all of these interdisciplinary clinicians all talking about shame in a room, talking about sex. How cool is that? So, our big old list of all of these different areas, still maybe a little bit confronting. I want you to think about education. So, let's do some more interactivity and go to your poll EV phone things. I want you to think about what you were taught about LGBTQIA plus issues in high school. However long that was ago. A little while, a long while. Try to stretch your mind. Have a think about how many of these issues you really covered in any amount of detail. High school. So, results so far say 92%, nothing at all surface details. And a lot of the other ones saying that they're sinful or bad. Yeah. Oops. Next question. So if that was high school, what about your professional training? If you're trained in, you know, one of the premier institutions of Australia or around the world, excellence in knowledge and academia, preparing you to go out into the workforce and work with everyone with wondrous results, healing the people of Australia, their bodies, minds, relationships. How much training was there in there? Oh, also mostly pretty bad. And I'm so curious for the people who said lots or positive, if it was very recent, and also what institution? Because I've been to lots of institutional things, even Monash, right? The training honestly really sucked around LGBTQ stuff. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And that's really disappointing, but it's also the reality. Yeah. Please, Sally.
Josh, I think it also depends on being a mature age student and what you bring to the course. So that's what I would add to that.
Right, thank you so much for adding that. So Sally just mentioned about what you bring to a course and what you like work out of the teachers who are teaching you, or grabbing onto course content and actually reading all of the extra readings that they set you.
It's also your upbringing as well and what you're exposed to. You don't have to be a mature age.
Yep.
I grew up with a lot of gay friends. So
Yeah.
I was exposed to that from
Your local culture. Yeah. And what it's like being in Melbourne versus being in rural Australia. What it's like being, you know, maybe doing your professional training in a country where homosexual acts are still illegal, right? And how much training you would expect from there. And it varies across the world, but mostly professional training still really sucks around this. Yeah. So, do we have one more? Yeah. Right, so that actually brings us really well to what did your family or culture teach you about these issues? Have a real think. There might have been some good things that got taught. But thinking about across all of these issues, which are the ones that maybe your family or your culture, local or religious or subcultures, what do they really tell you about these things? So also, quite a lot of us saying nothing surface level, simple or bad, or all of the above. But also, it's actually not surprising that almost 20% of the people in this room had pretty good stuff in their cultures around this. And I think that speaks to a little bit about like, why are the people in this room and chose to do this course? Yes?
Is it fair to expect universities to go into that detail with this specific group, knowing that there are lots of different groups out there. And what you said when you had the fisting example is that you researched.
Yep.
I think a lot of educational institutions teach us to research so that we can respond to these situations.
Right. But in the same way that, I don't know, I did psychology, right? And they taught us the basics of developmental psychology and cognitive psychology and behavioral and neuroscience and all of these things, and then said, if you want to learn more, go forth. But in terms of LGBTQ, we didn't have a subject. It certainly wasn't interspersed throughout all of our subjects. And I don't even know if we had like one lecture on it. And that was in like 6 years of schooling. Like I went to Melbourne Uni and Monash Uni. So we're not even being taught the basics. And we're certainly not being able to taught the basics to then be able to springboard off. And that's some of the issue. And I want you to consider your own responses earlier on, talking about confidence in working with particular clients, and also, whether you would do well with them. Actually, it makes sense that most of you might be feeling like, I don't know whether I'll be able to work with them super well, because actually most of you haven't received the training around it. That makes sense. Yeah, please.
I wanted to add, I also do training in Melbourne Uni.
Yep.
And I think in terms of education, it's not just about research, but it's also about attitudes. So I picked up that there was a lot of stigma around BDSM and kink, right? And so we're going to carry that on potentially into our profession, which means that we're really going to invalidate and see pathology where actually there isn't any, completely misformulate and mistreat, because we weren't perhaps even indirectly. So that's also part of education.
And we're learning from every aspect of culture. I'm going to pause questions and extra comments for the moment just to kind of get through to the end. But no, thank you so much. And I really welcome questions and comments later on. So we need to think about how do we get over our own shame in the room. So let's have a think about some clinician fears. I better not ask, I never learned this, I just don't know. What if I offend them? LGBTQ is really complicated, so I just can't. They'll be angry at me if I say the wrong thing. They'll ask a question that I can't answer. Or I don't know where to look or who to ask. Hands up if you've thought one of these things at some point with a queer client. I certainly have, yeah. So back to basics. Stay basic. Treat them as whole human beings. Listen to them. They're the experts in their life. And remember, we live in the modern era where Google is at our fingertips, on our phones or on our computers. Use it. There are so many resources out there. The internet is begging you to learn and to know. It's right out there if you're willing to take the step to look for it. So, we're going to go through a few examples to think about, how does this look like in the therapy room? So, a 20-year-old non-binary asexual client who's struggling to navigate sex with their allosexual girlfriend who has complex trauma. Allosexual just means attracted to people sexually as opposed to asexual. So the therapist, they misgender them. So this non-binary client goes by they, them, and they misgender them with he pronouns. Then pathologizes them as having a sexual disorder. So you're asexual, so there must be something wrong with you. And then interrogates them about their fertility. You're 20 years old, you must be thinking about birth control and pregnancy and having sex for kids. And they totally miss the clear signs of the girlfriend's trauma responses. So what happens? Client never returns, posts on Facebook that none of their friends should see that therapist. The therapist actually thinks they did a good job of diagnosis. The client suffers silently. And it might take them a long time to try therapy again. Or the trans broken arm experience. Trans woman comes in, broken arm after stacking her skateboard. The nurse in triage asks a lot of questions about the patient's hormones, genitals, sexual partners. Patient is told that she should lose weight and that women don't really skateboard. Also, her bones are weak because of the hormones, and she leaves without any pain management plan, doesn't speak up about how she actually also needed an STI test. Right? There are a few comments earlier on when we were talking about low bar answers, like how would you treat a non-LGBTQ person? Just do the same in some instances. A broken arm's a broken arm. Ask what you mean. So the doctor's taking a history of a pansexual woman. So pansexual, trying to describe things along the way, attracted to all genders or attracted to people not based on their gender. This doctor asks vaguely, are you sexually active? And eventually, ever had, actual sex? The client doesn't know that the clinician wants to refer for a vaginal ultrasound and wants to know if she's had penis and vagina intercourse, thinking that that's a really acceptable proxy for comfort. The clinician never explains this, doesn't check comfort level nor trauma history, assumes that intercourse would be necessary, wouldn't necessarily happen with male partners and not with female partners, doesn't even consider non-binary people. But I want you to zoom in. Shame is acting in the room there, and it's acting on the doctor's part. Rather than that doctor just saying, hey, I'm considering referring you for a vaginal ultrasound, let's talk about what that means. What increases the comfort of that, what the procedure is, and what we might do, like what some people find that helps with that or doesn't help with that. So, more class interaction. Are you all excited? Another person from each group is going to stand up, not the person who spoke before. Don't all put it on one person. So, you've got about 30 seconds to pick one of you. And I want to see 12 people standing up in the room. Go. I'm going to get you to read out something short. We'll start over this side this time. Right, yeah. Standing up, Alright, we'll start over here. Who's the person? Someone's got to do it. So, these are going to be some rapid fire fixes for your practice to help improve the way that you work with queer people. So, I want you to just read what it comes up with on the board.
What am I doing?
Just read it out.
Don't assume the pronouns of my partner.
Brilliant. Next. Well done. Yeah, easy.
Forget the terms biological or natal, man and woman.
Right.
Don't advertise as LGBTQ friendly if all staff aren't trained.
Right. This is especially about reception. If reception aren't trained, then they're going to get it wrong and you're not even going to see this client, or they're going to walk in already with a rupture.
Update your ancient forums.
Yeah. And if IT say the computer can't handle it, tell them it must. And keep bugging them each week until they update it. And I realize that's complicated, especially for big systems like hospitals, but it's worth it, because if you think every single trans client or non-binary client who has been through this service for the last however long, the hospital or whatever has been actively hurting. So we need to fix this right away. All right.
It's okay not to know, acknowledge it, and then research.
Brilliant. Google's your friend.
Leave your judgments at home.
Right. And you might have a judgmental response. That's okay. Keep it in your pocket. Put it aside. Review it later. Do some reflective practice. Go get supervision about it.
Advocate for your patients with other professionals.
Everyone in this room, I have no doubt, will be working on their LGBTQ literacy and is probably doing a great job. There's so much experience in this room. There's lots of people out there who are doing a really shit job. So advocate for your clients. Make sure you're gendering them correctly in your letters and forms with consent from your client, as well as just with them.
Use correct pronouns or names in your letters as well.
Sorry, I anticipated this one.
Build a relationship, keep clients for life.
Right. Once clients find an LGBTQ friendly practitioner, they'll stay with you forever. They'll follow you around the state and drive 2 hours out of their way to see you because you get it right.
Open up to alternative anatomy names, not male, female.
Right, and Yaku did a brilliant job earlier on today talking about some of those alternative names. Other ones that are common are things like front hole or like bussy, or there's a million different terms out there, and language is constantly evolving. But like, just be open to it.
Leave your religious icons at home unless you'd like to alienate queer clients.
Oh, controversial. But I want you all to consider it. Think about, what are you bringing into the room that might be a signal to your client that it's an unsafe space for them. So you might be the most queer inclusive person in the world, but if you're showing the client, here are all of these signals of patriarchy or oppression, they're going to be on the back foot already before coming in.
Learn safe and unsafe LGBTQ referral pathways.
Right, learn who to refer to when you're feeling out of your depth. But also, like, this isn't rocket science. A lot of the time, you can learn this. You are the professional who can work with queer clients. You already are. You might just not know it. And welcome and support queer sex workers and advocate for decriminalisation. So, final multiple choice. How do you tell if a client is LGBTQ? Who is all of this stuff relevant for? Really consider this. Oh, what's it gonna be? Okay, it was a joke. I'm sorry. All of those answers are wrong. So, you don't have gaydar. You don't have bi-fi, you don't have transceivers, you don't have ACE analyzers. If it's relevant, just ask what you mean, please. Like today I've got earrings that say queer, like if someone's like got a badge that says I'm fucking queer, or like a pansexual pride badge or something, sure, like that might give you a hint. Otherwise, LGBTQI plus people look like everything under the sun. And I want you to reflect on this quote from a client. The first time a doctor asked my name, how do you identify? It was about 6 months ago, and it was an amazing experience. An amazing experience. That's a low bar answer, right? Asking their name and how do I identify it, that's a low bar shot. And it was an amazing experience for this client. Please consider this. The next thing that I want you to consider is more political. And this talk for me is both professional, as what I do and specialize in. It's also personal. It's also political. This is my life and my friends' lives and my partner's lives and my clients' lives. So, equality is a nice word. Equality is about treating everyone the same. And in this little image, well, if you treat everyone the same, one of them doesn't actually get to see the football game, right? Lots of workplaces say we treat everyone the same. But fact is, treating everyone the same isn't good enough. It's not good enough in a society that only decriminalised homosexuality like a few decades ago, and you know, brother boys and sister girls are still being locked up in jails, not according to their gender, and at extraordinary rates. No, equality is not good enough. So maybe you come to this workshop and you do a ton of work on yourself and you improve your own personal practice and you do really, really great for your own clients. You know, LGBTQIA plus people are a priority for me. Good for you. Gold stars all round. So actually doing specialist work to make sure queer people are welcome in your practice and going the extra mile to bug IT to put preferred pronouns as a form on their thing. But I want you to consider that slide that I had back there with all of those red labels on it is about justice, and it's about politics, and it's about going to marches. It's about writing letters to your members of parliament. It's about going to the director of your company and saying, let's make this a workplace-wide thing. It's about, I don't know, getting the rainbow tick. It's about who you vote for. And so I want you to consider all of these issues not just in the isolation of yourself and your own practice, but become a practitioner advocate, become a practitioner activist, because the problems aren't in the client, they're in community, in society, in media, in institutions. And it's only through changing those institutions and the systems that we actually solve the cause of the issue. If we lived in a society without stigma or discrimination for queer people, then I wouldn't need to give this talk. So what can you do? Well, I want all of you now to write down 3 small changes that you can do and email them to me. If you feel weird about emailing to me, write them down on a sticky note and put it in your diary or text it to yourself. But I want you to write down 3 small changes that you can do, make them small and achievable, and all I'll do with that email is I'll just email you in a month and say, hey, how did you go? And if you want some help with any of them resourcing, super happy to do that, free of charge. How generous. Take the time now. And it might be updating the forms, it might be writing a letter to your local member, it might be getting Monash to update their bathrooms so that they have gender-neutral bathrooms. It might be reading a book about this stuff, because mostly I just haven't given you almost any content on LGBTQ sexuality. I've given you the underneath stuff. So educate yourself on the glossary. I've included with Anita some, heap of different resources. Make one of your actions just read that resource list. Listen to one podcast. My favorite is Queer Sex Ed. It's like to die for. I wish I could get everyone in this room to just listen to 100 episodes of that. It would make my job easier. So once everyone's written those down or sent me an email, I want you to remember, we've gone through a lot of heavy stuff today. I've made you all feel shame and even asked a whole lot of people to speak in public in front of a room of strangers. So I want you to remember that I believe in you, you're a good person, you're trying, you're helping. Give yourselves a pat on the back for really engaging with this talk as much as you felt able to. And thank you for your time.